Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Patrick, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sitebulb, and I'll be your host today. We have an absolutely brilliant panel of guests, and we'll be talking about SEO and growth in e-commerce. Those of you who aren't familiar with us already, Sitebulb is a website crawler and auditing tool. We have both desktop and cloud options available, which means we can deal with websites of pretty much any size or scale. And of course, lots of our customers use Sitebulb for auditing e-commerce websites. So if you aren't already using it, head across to sitebulb.com and you can check out our free trial. Before I get to the expert panel, a bit of housekeeping, please. We're going to save probably about 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for your questions. So please put them in the Q&A box next to the chat. Don't put them in the chat bit itself. There's a special bit especially for questions, and you can also upvote other people's questions in there if you can't think of any yourself. We have our marketing manager, Jojo, with us today behind the scenes. So she'll be hanging out and helping with the questions. So please go ahead and say hi to her in the chat. So on to our guests. They have a ton of experience between them in e-commerce, both in-house, agency side, everything really. So let me introduce them. We have Jamie Indigo, who is the Director of Technical SEO for Cox Automotive, where they're working with a massive consumer-facing brands. Jamie's understanding of technical SEO honestly puts me to shame, so I'm delighted to have you with us, Jamie.
How are you going to lie to people? It is so early in the morning.
Not for us. A former colleague of Jamie's and one of my favorite SEO Sitebulb clients. We also have Rachel Anderson, the SEO manager of Weedmaps. It's been incredibly interesting for us to see firsthand some of the things that you folks have been working on at Weedmaps. So welcome as well, Rachel.
Thank you.
And we have Luke Carthy, a seasoned speaker at conferences all over the world on e-commerce and CRO. Luke is a pure play e-commerce specialist, and when he's not building his own stuff, he's advising massive global brands and helping them with growth. And finally, we have Ash Young, who I would say made the pretty rare jump from agency owner to e-commerce business owner. Ash founded the digital agency Evoluted right here in Sheffield, where I live, back in 2006, and then in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, I think, launched carmats.co.uk. And he's been publicly sharing probably sharing progress of that venture on socials. And I think the last update on there was about 4 million sales so far this year. And as you can see, Ash is literally like shipping the stuff himself. So it's all good there. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. So, oh Siri, shut up. I want to start with the current landscape of SEO in e-commerce. So it feels like there's been so much flux in the industry with SERP volatility over the last few months. And I'd like to know kind of how much you think this has impacted e-commerce specifically. Jamie, might you be able to start us off with this one?
Oh, I love it when you ask because I have so many thoughts and opinions. Yes, Google doesn't want to be where you find them all or the Black Friday deals. They want to be where you shop them. They've made a massive shift from showing category landing pages. Being an e-com, usually your category name, shop, X, is your bread and butter. If you look at ranking shifts, you're seeing all those lovely category pages suddenly plummeting down, but the individual product pages themselves scooping on up as Google puts those product graph results in there. It's a big shift, and you have to move from, I want to get you shopping for sleeping bags, to really optimizing the product detail pages for sleeping bags. What are you putting on there? What kind of information is available? How much are you giving Google, and how quickly and easily can they get it?
Is anyone else seeing the same stuff as that, or anything different as well?
Loads of volatility, yeah. Lots of pain, and equal in the opposite direction, lots of pleasure for other clients. Like there has been an absolute yo-yo of algorithmic updates. That there is the kind of the classic sit and wait, fix it and wait for your praises. And then I've got a client that has a competitor that has a horrendous website, almost everything technically wrong with it, but it ranks beautifully for every competitive term, and it makes absolutely zero sense. And it's just the two of them combat and kind of go against each other like this, and it's crazy. But tapping into Jamie's point, yes, Google is greedy. continually gets greedier, organic space gets smaller, sponsored space gets bigger, and the more competitive the marketplace, the less organic space there is. So it's kind of like a double whammy effect. But yeah, I think what's the latest victim, or one of the latest ones, I think there's an update to flights to car hire, is dominant, you know, kind of not so much anymore, but probably the early 2010s. Worked with a couple of car hire companies, and you know, some of these have actually gone out of business as a result of it. They just cannot compete. But yeah, it's I think the key word here, really, no pun intended, but you know, it happens, is volatility. It's just crazy at the moment.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a strange niche where Google struggles to tell the difference between our product landing pages and our category pages, because they tend to be very similar. But we've seen that our PDPs have done really, really well, and we're benefiting from a lot of the changes recently, which is absolutely amazing. Obviously, to be winning for once is good to see.
So the cannabis space is actually kind of interesting. So Google does not like cannabis products in search. And so what we're actually seeing is the category pages are performing better, because Google does not want to be showing these PDPs because they're not really part of their shopping experience. The exception being where Google doesn't understand that something is a cannabis product. And that's where you see the shopping results. So that's always really fun to do a search and be like, okay, oh, Google clearly does not understand that this is weed, because it's showing a bunch of search queries and just a bunch of really low value sites that are not selling high quality product. So we're actually seeing, we're investing a lot in both PDPs as well as category pages, because that seems to be what Google likes.
I love that Google is the search engine that they didn't know the cookies were medicated.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So as a result of any of these sorts of changes, have you like shifted either your strategy or your recommendations that your kind of go-tos?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a horrible one to answer, because it's kind of a yes and no. But to kind of sit on the yes, I think, as always, and I'm sure it's a bit of a broken record, but your foundations are always going to be the same, right? So really solid taxonomy with clear, distinctive categories, really good kind of hierarchy structure of your parent and child categories, good filter structure, whatever it is you use. So, you know, the basics there, PDP, good descriptions, all that sort of good stuff. Where it gets a lot more interesting is probably around brand, right? And kind of using that differentiation of things like UGC and reviews and social and social proof. And they're the kind of differentiators. Because I think nowadays, and I say nowadays, probably, to be honest, the last 5 years, maybe longer, technical gap in e-commerce is closing, right? I think maybe 15 years ago, technical probably was quite a good competitive lever, because the likes of Shopify weren't as established as what they are. But now it seems that Shopify literally powers the backbone of every successful e-commerce brand in some way or another. So then the technical kind of component of SEO is taken off of the cards, off of the table. So your differentiation is even smaller. And this is where brand and content, tone of voice, and loyalty and all this sort of stuff makes a big difference. So I think for me personally, I have transitioned more from technical to more kind of conversion, search, analytics, and that good old kind of giving customers the ability to completely and wholeheartedly trust a brand. Yeah.
That's interesting, actually. So I have seen technical sort of feel like it's kind of done this, and with the rise of JavaScript, it's becoming more and more important again. Possibly, that happened after your sort of shift away to the CRO. I'd love to hear. Well, but I know both Jamie and Rachel have dealt with the JavaScript issues in the past. Do you agree with Luke's sentiment about like the playing field getting level from technical or not?
Not in the SEO space. It's not as developed of an industry. We have a lot of really small businesses that are running very small websites that are usually using like a fab solution that's not Shopify. It's something within the cannabis sector, and most of those are not set up very well for SEO. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to rank because they don't know how to do that. So it's a little bit less sophisticated of a space. I will say though, like in general, the competition, the differentiator seems to be more around what unique content you have, whether that's UGC, whether that's utilizing like large data to, I don't know, like chewing Amazon, or like writing like review snippets with AI, that kind of stuff. Being able to provide unique content from other people is more important, but I wouldn't say that technical is less important in my space.
I think it's yes, and I think it's no, because we have an algorithm now. It depends, my friends. We have an algorithm now that really has updates every day. People are like, oh, how'd the last update affect X, Y, or Z? And it's like, which one do you mean? There's experiments, there's updates, every piece going on all the time. The bigger you are, the more technical matters. The smaller you are, the more content matters. There's a trade-off to it. And that's even different in every vertical. So if you are in the medical space, you're going to have different standards to hold up to than if you're in the drop shipping space. I think the big thing that came away from the big thing that equalized a lot of pieces and took a lot of players out of it is we all got trust issues shopping online during the pandemic, because there were a lot of products out there that were not what they said on the tin. So Google is like, we have to keep your trust. We're going to be a little bit stricter about this. And there's definitely babies in that bathwater.
Ash, do you see, like, obviously you kind of to some extent picked your own niche to work in. Was part of that when you chose that, was part of that because you saw a landscape that didn't have this sort of issue, or was easy to access?
Yeah, so then when we started, a lot of the players in our industry were on lots of different e-commerce platforms, and what's happened over the last 3-4 years is they've all moved to Shopify nearly. So a lot of the players are on Shopify. So Luke's point has got a lot of credence for me that actually you're not competing so much on a lot of technical things, but actually what you're competing on is how well those businesses can set up their Shopify sites and set them up for best practice. And a lot of businesses just don't have the skill set or the resource or the knowledge to do that. So they go with what's out of the box, and actually they lose a lot as a result of that. And you can have really well optimized Shopify sites, but obviously you've got to go through the effort. You've got to know what you're doing. So for me, the big shift has been that everyone's moved onto the platform that we're using, because to a certain degree, we talked about it so much at the start about what we were doing, how we were doing it, and people have literally gone and just, we'll use that exact same apps, exact same everything. So it then becomes a very level playing field.
Got yourself to blame for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've mentioned both reviews and trust in that last answer between you. And I don't know about anybody else, but like when I read product reviews these days, my AI bullshit radar is on like permanent red alert.
Yeah.
And is this a problem? Like, I don't feel like I know anything more than as a consumer. Do you guys have any more of an insight into this?
It's so big of a problem that Mozilla has developed a tool to help you spot fake ones.
Really?
Oh, nice.
Yes. I will have to find that link.
Yeah, I think it's it goes back to the whole once you've exhausted something to the point where it's no longer a competitive advantage, it gets abused, right? So I think, yeah, to your point, reviews is a great one. So this is kind of where you lean more towards things like user-generated content, right? So Q&A, actual pictures, and actually nobody's perfect, business, person, otherwise. So seeing some negative reviews can actually help from a constructive perspective. So Ash, I've always kind of had a laugh at some of your tweets about some of the absolutely outrageous nonsense that people fire out at you. But I think it's great for someone, when a customer's placed an order, they've kicked off and they've said, look, it's crap, customer service is terrible, and then you've actually found out they've been calling the wrong company. and have left a review on your platform. If you're responding to that, it kind of shows a lot more sincerity. It shows a lot more genuine. So I think going back to big players like Amazon and eBay, Amazon, I agree. I will not trust reviews whatsoever until I see a good quality picture that looks like it wasn't taken in a studio in UGC, right? So I can get an idea of whether it's true to size, depending on what it is I'm ordering, or whether it's reliable or whatever. But yeah, it again goes back to that differentiation. If everybody's got great reviews or everybody's got review saturation, then there is no sense of differentiation anymore. So it just becomes a norm rather than a situation that you're choosing competitors between.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to have that mix of good and bad reviews. I love bad reviews when they come through because it makes everything seem so much more real. And I read a lot of our reviews, and they're not written with AI, but you look at them and go, who writes that much about a set of car mats, right? Who writes a paragraph of text about gushing about how good their car mats are? And you do worry that it puts people off, and people think, well, you've made it all up, you've bought all these reviews. And it is a big thing. I look at sites, I look at reviews, and I question whether they're real or not. I look at some competitors that have launched, and they've launched with 1,000 reviews, and I'm like, they're not real because you launched last week. And when you're in the industry, yeah, you can see it straight away because you're living and breathing it, and you know, well, you've just launched, you've literally just started trading. They're not real reviews, and it is a big issue. And trust for us is one of the things that we've always tried to get across: is that we're a real business. We're actually, you know, you can talk to us, you can email us, do whatever you want, and it's more about getting that content and getting that UGC content out there so people can see the product, see people using the product. We just did a behind the scenes one so people can see how they're actually made, because a lot of people say that we make them in China, and it's not what they're ordering. It's going to get shipped in, it's going to be, you know, absolute garbage. But, you know, we showed how they're made in the UK in some videos, and they're doing really, really well, which is good to see.
I mean, is that like you know, is video kind of one of the answers to that question? I suppose this is kind of a two-part question, really. Is like integrating video, short form video, into your strategy, but then also like is TikTok and Instagram, are these either channels or threats to SEO? I've got about 9 questions in one here. Talk about video, somebody.
So I think video is really right. It's harder to fake video effectively at the moment. So I think if you get some really good UGC, it's great on TikTok, on Instagram, and social channels. But we're just about to release an update on the site where we actually bring those same UGC videos into the PDPs in the same format, so people can actually just have a browse, have a scroll, see the product, see how it fits, see how it works, see how it clips in. You can answer so many technical questions as well with a 30-second video that actually in text or pictures is just really painful to consume. And people don't want those really polished product videos. They actually want to see a short, snappy, maybe a little bit rough around the edges video that's from a real person, or could be from a real person.
I like to. You ever heard of Keith Lee, the viral TikTok guy who does food reviews? If not, go and check him out. But some of his early stuff, he sits in a Paw Patrol chair and just reviews takeout spots. Right? They are the most authentic, legit, scrappy bits of video you can ever kind of come across in TikTok. The editing is terrible, right? But the engagement is brilliant. And the more recent stuff, it's still incredible, but it's nowhere near as scrappy and as authentic. So I think it kind of taps into Ash's point that sometimes someone kind of like breathing into an iPhone and filming with the wrong camera, and then eventually getting, you know, the kind of thing we try and do a video call with your mom. That's the kind of level of content you want to see reviewing your product, rather than a high quality studio backlit. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that as promotional material, but when it's UGC, the more authentic and real and low rent it is, the more kudos it gets. But I think this is kind of where you start to bridge the gap between SEO and UX and conversion and actually just appeasing the customer. It's less than about technical makeup and more about just giving the customer what they need to make a decision to buy from you or one of your channels or somebody else, you know?
Yeah, and I suppose that's kind of like what the whole TikTok thing is as well. You know, you've just got someone who's stood in front of a camera basically going, "Oh yeah, I've got this thing." So
I
do
never
you?
trust a review more than when they have a pimple patch on. Like, I know that's a real human. I trust that.
Yeah, exactly.
So have any of those sort of new social channels, has anyone seen any impact from any of this stuff? I honestly, I don't really know anything about it other than I scroll straight past it.
So there's a brand of, I'm a big fan of cars, right? Big petrol head. So I'm probably on Ash's radar at some point. But I am a big fan of a brand called Gloss, which is they're a car detailing brand of products. And
Brilliant.
I'm sure Ash has probably seen these guys before, right? But the guy who does the videos is absolutely unreal. But I am pretty sure he's riding a wave of absolute cash from TikTok because all the subsidized
100%.
orders. So he sells a product for like 12 quid. TikTok shop is subsidizing it and they're selling his product at £3 something for new customers. So TikTok are just giving a discount and they're basically losing money on everyone's first order to try and gain traction, right? So they're going against the likes of Facebook, they're tapping into live shopping, but some people are making some serious money off that platform. But yeah, I think it's huge. And then that's got nothing to do with technical SEO whatsoever, and then probably is more towards the space of actually marketplace or social SEO or social optimization, right? So it's no longer about canonicals and 301s. It's actually about tagging and ad setup and all that sort of stuff. But the whole thing is an entire ecosystem of selling. It's still the same products you're selling. It's just through what channel, you know?
It's almost going back to that face-to-face selling, right? Because he does really well because his personality is huge and it comes across in all his videos, and you want to buy from him and you believe in his products, and that's what it goes back to. It goes less about, you know, the boring technical side of things and more about like actually how you might have bought from someone 20 years ago.
No, we can't be calling technical things boring.
Sorry,
that's outrageous.
Boring, mate. Come on.
So right,
Respect our bot friends.
I've got some technical questions, so I'm gonna move on to one of them. Do the boring stuff. So kind of, you know, we're talking a bit before about how some of the sort of technical advancements have leveled the playing field a little bit, and I want to talk about core web vitals because of all the clients I speak with, I would say that e-commerce businesses probably tend to be the ones most focused on core web vitals, and in particular benchmarking against competitors. Now that might be coincidental, I don't know, but would you agree that that is a trend? Is that something that e-commerce care about more? Than
Yeah, no, there's 85 tracking marketing pixels in the head of every page, and it shows.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about crawl budget.
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Go for it. It's all you, Rachel.
Oh, yeah, just going back to crawl budget. With these e-commerce sites, they're usually quite large. Not all the time, but most of the time they're quite large. And Google has a certain amount of resources that they're going to dedicate to crawling, rendering, and indexing your website. And so if you have a faster response time, they're going to be able to get to more material on your website, which becomes very, very important. So that's where we've seen the biggest impact is when we improve core web vitals on a surface, Google can crawl more things faster, and then we see better traffic as a result.
Also, just, you know, humans can use your site. Please let humans use your site. You don't need to load everything. Just let me see the thing and do the thing. Thank you.
Yeah, big time. Thing I see time and time again in this space. I think the nail was hit on the head a second ago. I'm not too sure if it was yourself, Rachel, or Jamie that mentioned it. Probably yourself, Jamie, about like 80 tracking pixels. E-commerce is terrible for it, right? Yep. You've got your Hotjar thing. Then you've probably got your TikTok pixel.
And they all want to be right after the opening head tag. You say no.
And then you've got 3 Google Analytics properties. One's probably UA, which doesn't work anymore. Then you've got the ones that are native to Shopify. It's an absolute shit show before you even get to anything in the DOM, like, or anything rendering in the page, right? So like, first thing, then your mega menu's massive and JavaScript heavy, and then you've got massive images, and then yada yada, lazy loading and animations, and it is exhausting. So yeah,
horizontal carousels.
Yes,
no
all
one
of that
likes
stuff.
those.
And Shopify is horrendous for it. So actually, I appreciate now I'm about to give you a complete U-turn on what I said earlier, that technical isn't that much of a differentiation. But I think in some cases, more isn't more, right? So yes, apps are important. Yes, functionality is incredibly important in e-com and any environment, but actually more isn't always more. And yeah, just be in a situation where you go to a poor area of signal, Try and use a website on a mobile phone and see how frustrating it is. And if it infuriates you in the middle of a countryside where your signal is just about 3G, imagine how that's going to impact people who are in London, going around in the tube, signal's a problem. Again, it kind of goes back to simulate a real environment, doesn't it? Like, be your user, be your customer. Fast websites are never a bad thing, unless you are in the world of insurance, where actually loading results fast makes it seem as if it's dodgy. But that's a whole other topic. Let's not talk about.
I mean, for e-commerce, it is constantly a battle between features and functionality. We want new shiny things. We forget that when we add all of the shiny things, we move much slower.
Yeah.
Big time.
All right, I've got one question, only one, I promise, on crawling. So I guess it really comes into play when you're dealing with really, really big websites. So like millions and millions of pages. And, if there's sort of 50,000 pages, yeah, fine, you can crawl the whole thing and you can make all your decisions based on that. But if you've got millions and millions of pages, how do you deal with that? Like, what's the tactic? Are you crawling it all, or are you crawling bits of it, or a mix and match?
I feel deeply qualified to take this question. I'm so excited. So, you say 50,000 pages. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Oh, I miss the days when it was like, I work in ecom with 70,000 products. When you're trying to crawl a site that large, devil's details matter more than ever. You have to be precise in what you crawl. That crawl config is everything. Love Sitebulb. We got those segments in place. They are my friend. We use our rules right. You're not going to get it all. And if you do get it all, you're going to crash your machine. If you don't crash your machine, it's going to take 3 hours to load it. And then you saw something shiny or a fire happened and you never got back to it. So what is the minimum that you can crawl to get an accurate sample? Break out some math. You have 6 million products. What type of distribution do you need to have an equal view across them? Really, it works best when we live in a world of having good URL structures. But we adapt. Get crafty, get clever.
So it's a really interesting one for me because I do everything I can. My lazy brain kind of works in my favor here, which is if there's a massive crawl. So I've worked with a large automotive brand in the past, which I won't mention. It's common if I've got an NDA or not. I don't want to get into trouble. But huge website, millions of pages, and I didn't want to crawl it. So the way that I handled it was I actually asked some questions. How many categories? How many listings? Kind of give me a number, right? And if we are in a situation where the total number of URLs that I can see in Search Console roughly kind of matches the inventory and category count, then we're probably going to be okay. And then I can start to crawl. But if we're in a situation where I'm told we've got 100,000 listings, we've got 5,000 categories, and there's 82 million URLs, then hell, something's wrong here, right? So this is where you kind of dive in. But the crawl for me is a secondary thing that I like to jump into after I've done the basic kind of 101 of what should we expect. And then to jump into Jamie's point, like templates are massive, right? You make one change, you have, maybe 2 million URLs using that same template. That's a substantial impact potentially, so you've really got to be careful. But a small sample from each template or from each subfolder or however you're structured is great. And then to really help bring things to life, and Patrick and I have spoken about this, I think, during lockdown, I love the Sitebulb content extraction, custom extraction tool where you can just grab stuff on the fly, which can make your life easier, and the templating thing as well, where it kind of gives each template a name. But yeah, I think the short tail of it is, if it's a massive website, don't just hit start and hope for the best, because you'll end up upset, irritable. You will be in a fire. Your laptop's going to crash, and it's inefficient. It's a waste of time, resources, and everything else, right? And there's a chance of CDNs there to stop all that from happening.
There is, by the way, another solution if you don't want the laptop to go on fire, and that's to use Sitebulb Cloud.
Patrick, I think I managed to just crash that again, actually.
Oh, God.
I'm so proud of you. I love that.
Well, so here's the deal. We're working on internal links. For that, I do need a bigger crawl because I need to know what's going screwy. And so that's what I was trying to do. And I tried to do it twice in a row and it didn't like that. But if we're going back to like the 50,000, I think 50,000 is a great lazy way to get a feel for where the problems are. So then you can config a real crawl so that then you can do a larger crawl. That's kind of been my technique, and definitely what I did back at Deep Crawl back in the day. So I think that's a really helpful way to get started. If you're like, oh, there is a lot of mess here, how do I even identify where those are? I think that's a nice way to get started. But yeah, in general, you don't need to crawl everything. It's all about what percentage of things you can crawl, because you can even crash your cloud crawler.
Make sure you put exclusions in for the 80 tracking pixels in the head. That'll save you time.
Absolutely.
All right, I've got a bit of an open question now, to do with growth. So, is there any like particular growth strategies you're working on at the moment in e-commerce, stuff you're seeing work particularly well right now? Open the floor.
I really want Ash to
I
continue.
am. What you got?
I mean, not SEO, but particularly social side of things is working really, really well for us. Getting that content right, letting Facebook do its thing with big campaigns where we're not being too specific and letting the algorithm figure stuff out. Same with PMax in Google Ads. That nearly runs our entire Google Ads account now. We've managed to move it all over, and it's really, really good. Big issue I see coming with e-commerce is the reliance on giving all that information to Facebook and Google, is that we're giving it all this conversion data. And like today, Google's not tracking a lot of our conversions. We know they're coming through because we can see them, but Google doesn't know they're coming through. So what happens with the machine learning algorithm tomorrow when it's missing half the conversions? Does it go, well, that's not worked, we should stop spending money? Or does it figure it out and keep going? And that's where I think, and certainly Evoluted,
People always want to just spend more money. Come on.
Yeah, or just spend more money. We've seen a lot of issues where clients break their tracking and then Google loses its mind basically because it's now reliant on that data to actually perform. And that's a big issue. But I think for growth, if you get it right, you can just eat all your competitors.
Yeah, it's that whole classic, the 1%. So like, the kind of North Star metric of finding out exactly your messaging in your customer and then scale it. But finding that kind of catalyst could be life's work for some people, right? Depending on the industry you're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is less of an SEO question, irritatingly, and it is more kind of to Ash's point of a brand exposure, things like email, CRM, lead magnets, promotions, bundles, comparisons, UGC, all of that stuff, which is all what marketing is all about. Like SEO is a consequence of marketing. It's not a marketing channel in itself, right? So people still buy from people. So people still need the desire to buy a product, whether that's SaaS or whatever it might be, a new mattress, whatever it is. There is still an audience that wants to buy something. Technical kind of brings the barrier down and makes it more accessible for people who are in the market or researching that. But there is a broader sense of what's going on. There is, to kind of come up with a really tactful example, and to your point, Ash, about data, I think this is incredibly unloved as an area. In almost all clients I work with, when I do things like GA4 audits and CRO and so on, we have to have a solid baseline for what's performing. Maybe 90% of the time, and that's probably been quite a conservative number, analytics is broken somewhere. So I think the catalyst for me when it comes to growth is making sure your data is completely watertight before you scale. And that goes for SEO as well, because attribution's a problem, especially with this consent mode V2 nonsense, which I don't want to spend so much time on because it makes people cry. It's horrible. But there is a solution for that. I'd love to kind of plug a tool, if I can, called Little Data. And that kind of just basically ticks all the boxes for your e-com tracking and just kind of removes a lot of the stuff. It's all server-side, everything all about compliance and so on. But that normally solves a lot of problems for particularly people on Shopify. But yeah, data, analytics, attribution, all of this stuff is incredibly painful to get right, but when you get it right, it's much easier to scale and rely on the information that you have. So there's nothing worse than spending 100K on ads and then everything comes through as direct. You're like, shit, what the hell was that for, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Tying back to Ash, SEOs for a long time. We've had our lane, we've had our GSC, we've stayed there. It's very nice. It's our home. It's occasionally broken. We have to venture out now. We need to be in the merchant center. We need to be looking at our feeds. They're incredibly important. If you want to be in that product knowledge panel, if you want to be in the shopping graph results, those are populated by feed. They're a blend of ad, feed, and on page, but Google likes being lazy and they prefer people who help them be lazy. So they could expend all this energy and effort to crawl your 6 million products, or you could just send them the information parsed out in a nice little bot friendly way.
I like that. I like that.
So we've been talking a little bit about Shopify today, and I have certainly found myself, I think I would guess that I convert more easily on Shopify sites or other sites that use those sort of one-click checkout things, like the link pay or whatever it's called. Has anyone actually got an experience of that, or any of these things having a measurable impact on conversion, repeat buying, anything like that?
I mean, we get a huge number of people emailing us because they've checked out accidentally. I had one when I was doing tickets yesterday, and a lady emailed in saying her son had pressed the button while he was on the website and managed to check out. Because it's that easy now, because everything's got your details saved. You've got Shop Pay and Shopify. We do Apple Pay, Google Pay. It's just so easy to check out, isn't it? You literally can just press a few buttons and you're in.
Yeah,
it makes a massive difference.
I would second that. When Acro Drops was a thing before I had inventory problems, we had a new piece of tech which didn't last very long. It's called Fast Checkout. You may have seen it running around. They burnt through money at a ridiculous rate, but they were effectively trying to be one-click Stripe. And the exact same problem as yourself, Ash, just like you literally click once on the thing and you've got an order, to the point where you have a 5-minute countdown to cancel it. So you click buy now, and your natural assumption is that there's another pop-up somewhere or another screen. And no, you click that thing, it's done, man. Like, the order's done. So it's faster than Amazon's. So as a consequence of that, our conversion rate was pretty solid. But we probably have 10 or 15 emails every couple of days, or maybe a week, of just like, hey, really sorry, I forgot to put this in, or I've got the wrong address in there. So it's a double-edged sword. I think, yes, it can help. But the worst thing about situations like that is you still have to pay the fees. So even, they've clicked buy, Fast have got their money, I still have to reimburse the customer minus my fees now. So I'm at a loss. So they can be great. But I think, as always, it's sometimes easier isn't always better. There's that fine line between one-click checkout and actually, as you've said, Ash, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and those consistent experiences across every single site. Contacts for ecom is Google Pay, Apple Pay. That's all we need.
Yeah.
So do you think that having a checkout experience where they're recommending other products to the consumer is actually a better checkout experience than one click?
That's a good question. I mean, why the hell not? Everyone else. I mean, it's one of those things. Maybe try it, experiment. There's very, very briefly, I guess, one thing that worked really well for a client of mine. They're in the pet industry, and actually they only sell dog food. But of course, when people get puppies or kittens or whatever that may be, there's so many other things you need to think about, right? From like harnesses to crates and beds and all that kind of stuff. So they just ended up went, you know what, we don't sell this stuff, but they've just said get 10% off all this stuff and just set up affiliate deals through email, and they cream a commission back from everybody else. And they did that through the checkout, and that was wildly successful for them. So they lost sales as a result of it, but actually the commissions that they got by proxy was brilliant. But it doesn't work for everyone, right? I imagine kind of been a distraction in the checkout. You could find it doesn't work. It's one of those test it and see rather than a resounding hell yeah across the whole industry,
Yeah. I mean, you can go too easy. Like the Shopify, there's a lot of apps now where you can just one-click add to your checkout, on the checkout, or even after the checkout. And we get a lot of people take those upsells on the thank you page. And like Luke was saying, you've already paid, and you just press the button and it adds that to your order and charges you automatically. No need to do anything. I think some of those can be too easy and actually can be a negative experience because you end up having to refund people and deal with customer service issues for a marginal amount of additional revenue.
No such thing as a free lunch, as they say.
So have you guys got any thoughts about sort of the rise of subscription models in e-commerce, which kind of feels a bit like the holy grail, like guaranteed repeat business? Anyone got any experience in that?
No, but I have to trust you to click subscribe. So just keep that in mind.
I mean, Weedmaps has had people in the industry that have had subscription boxes and they have gone out of business. So I'm not sure it's a great selling point in the cannabis industry. I think mainly because people want the ability to choose their product. There's so many strains, they make people feel different ways. And so they want more ability to choose and customize. And most of the subscription box services were not able to provide that.
Wait, was it like a wine box service? Like it has notes of.
Yeah, so they like partnered with a lot of cannabis brands. They were only in California. They like had a set type of products. You could say what like your favorite style, what edibles, flower, etc. was, and then you would just get a box once a month, and it would be like $200 worth of product for $100 or something. But you don't know what you're going to get. Like, is it going to be something you actually like? Is it going to be something terrible? You really have no control over it. And so I think consumers didn't really like that. So in our space, I think the only kind of subscription model that would work is if you had a lot more control over what was going into the box.
Yeah, I think I like to think of this as like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay to the world of SatNav, in that SatNav was such a thing that you paid extra for, probably like late 90s, early noughties, right? Where like you pay $1,000 to get SatNav built into a car. Now it's absolutely everywhere. Every car you buy now comes with one or both of those options. My point is, again, it goes back to the whole Shopify thing, is as soon as the Shopify apps took off with subscription, everyone just bolted it on and thought, why not? Subscribe and save 5% off. With some things it works really well, like things that you consistently have. I'll go back to the pet food industry, dog food. Your dog eats that meal every week, and how much they're going to eat, you order it. It saves you the ag of having to worry about replacing it. It also works incredibly well where there's a lot of variety. So there's some industries I've worked in the world of fragrance where like people love fragrances and there's so many to get around. So every month you get like a selection of 6 and the sample size. You can kind of play around and see what you like. Same with skincare, hair care. But there's just some industries where it really doesn't make sense. And I can imagine actually cannabis and that kind of area, or even things like chocolate and snacks and so on, you want the variety. You don't want it to be forced upon you. Like maybe even the purchase experience is part of why you do it. It's a, you know, so I guess it's like buying a designer bag, and there's probably lots of people and opinions with this, but you wouldn't want to have an automatic, even if they were cheap, you wouldn't want to have an automatic subscription of a bag, because actually going into maybe a department store and having that, you know, sit down with a bottle of, you know, a glass of Prosecco or whatever, and having that whole experience is part of it. I think it can be helpful. I think it can be massively destructive for businesses as well, because like expired cards, inventory planning, returns, people kind of forgetting to cancel them, they're on holiday, and it's a nightmare. But I guess for some it works. For others, maybe it's just a bit of a flash in the pan, a fad, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have jumped into it because they can. But I think a lot of people don't think about how it's sold. So we've got cats, we buy a lot of cat food, we put on a subscription, but actually how long does a big bag last us? We've got no idea. So we suddenly end up with like, we're swimming in cat food, so we have to start the subscription for a bit. And we just worked with a client, Evoluted, that sells supplements, and they had it on subscription, so you could repeat the box every month was their like default option. It's actually, you need to work out how long each pack's going to last somebody based on how long they're taking it, and then make sensible suggestions to them so that, you know, this one might be every month, this might be every 2 months, depends what it's going to be and how long that'll last them, and not just go bump, yeah, everything's the same.
Does anyone remember those Amazon buttons? You remember
the dash, yeah.
Right? I don't know what happened to them. They need to come back, right? There needs to be some kind of like open source platform where you just hit the cat's face on you, not literally the cat face, but you hit the cat face button, right?
Don't punch the cat.
Don't punch cats, guys. Number one takeaway from this webinar. But you got like a little button with a cat face on it. You press it, and then like 24, 48 hours later, you get your big bag of cat food again. Like having that automation, but also just the one click away.
There are tutorials on how to build those.
Yeah, and then you've got the 6-year-old kid who's like, right? AKA my daughter.
That may be why they stopped.
But yeah.
Maybe
Right,
your cat
lovely
might
stuff.
do it.
So we're going to move on to attendee questions in a moment. So I'd say this is pretty much your last chance to get them in. And don't forget to upvote any that you like the look of. I have one more thing I'd like to ask, because we've been going on about so much about, video content and third-party reviews being so valuable. And this is the part of the webinar where Jojo tells me that I'm supposed to say how awesome Sitebulb is. But I'm not going to do that, because we've got a few Sitebulb customers in with us today. So if anyone wants to have a go instead, please feel free. No one says anything now. This is yeah.
No. I love Sitebulb. So when I joined Weedmaps, we were using another cloud crawler, and I did not like it. It was very expensive. It wasn't doing the things I needed it to do. I had to get customer support to do random things that I had always had the ability to configure myself. And yeah, I talked with Patrick, and he was like, yeah, we're creating a cloud crawler version, and it's been incredible for us. No more of my machine catching on fire, a reasonable price point, no restrictions on the numbers of URLs. So that's how I end up being lazy and managing to crash it. Although crashing it just means you press reset and it's all fine.
Yep.
So it's not a big deal. I think like the hardest part was literally just getting our engineering team to whitelist the IP. I think that was the hardest part.
That's pretty good.
I mean, I fell in love with Sitebulb for many reasons. The biggest reason is your release notes, because they make me so happy. There is a certain level of honesty that comes when tech SEOs are like, I'm fed up with this, and you capture it so beautifully. But this tool is also adapted constantly. I've definitely sent you in requests to be like, yeah, okay, let's work with that. Constant movement, really working to improvement, really good communication. The other week, I broke a crawl so good, and you were just right there to help. So I think it's that trust thing, going, hey, I can trust these people. If something goes wrong, we get support there. That's pretty lovely. I also had an industrial crawler at another site, and I had questions, and the account manager was like, well, go get certified in the tool. I'm like, really? You want me to get a fake certificate to go ahead and ask you the same question? Okay.
Oh yeah, and Luke, you mentioned earlier the scraper element, the
Content extraction
bit, right?
the extraction. Yes, the easiest extraction tool that exists. You're just like, oh, I want this element. You can point and click, and then it's like, oh, this one, and I'm like, yeah, please tell me all of the pages that we have 200ing that should be 404ing, because there's no products available, and it was very helpful.
Yeah, it's for me being Mr. Lazy, right? So I love the work that I do, but I hate being inefficient. To the point where I'm the kind of person that the irony of this is I would spend 10 hours trying to automate something where I could spend 2 hours just doing the damn thing, right? So, but the point is, I love Sitebulb because you just kind of you set it off, in all kinds of intents purposes. You set your crawl, and then all the kind of insights and stuff are kind of there. Yes, as with always, your tool is only as good as the person using it, but it really sets you up for success and pulls things that one even think about. One of those things is automatically setting the crawl rates when you're crawling, when it identifies Cloudflare, or when it kind of identifies
Shopify.
Again a Shopify site, right? Or like another CDN, or there's a situation where it finds something that it shouldn't, like I've seen before, like a through-on redirect loop for certain user agents and all sorts of stuff. It just pulls them in rather than you having to crawl first, walk off, go for a call, or go, for a cup of tea. You've burnt on half an hour, and then you've gone, shit, right? You just get all of that before you start to crawl. So I'm sure probably over the years I've been using it, it saved me a good amount of tears and hours. But yeah, big fan.
And bot crawls. Oh, praise be. Thank you for all those notifications being like, are you sure about that?
I think from our side of things, I personally use it a little bit differently. Our site is incredibly template driven. So like Luke, I mean, everything's templated, everything comes from data. the issue with the data is it's entered by humans, and that breaks things. And I actually decided to
Humans do
check
ruin
that
everything.
everything's correct, and no one's broken anything. No one's broken any of the links, any of the schema that we automatically generate from loads of different bits of the page that people set up. And it's good to be able to crawl and make sure that everything's doing what it should be doing, and then go and fix the data that someone's entered incorrectly.
There you go.
Well, guys, thanks for all of those. We can now put them on our product pages and.
UGC,
Right, so
like
we've
homepage.
got loads of questions and we better get to them. So, Jojo, have you got the first one for us, please? Awesome. Okay, so I know we talk a lot about Google. What about Bing? Have you noticed an increase in traffic or even conversion rates in recent months?
Bing conversion is always higher most of the time. That'll be my quick 10-second answer. Older people with more money is a very broad, gross overstatement. Internet Explorer kind of, people who know exactly what they want. But yeah, long story short, I think Bing's brilliant. It's a smaller audience for sure, but I think if you've got someone using Bing or what's it bloody well called now, a Copilot, normally conversion is greater. Don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, Bing loves us. And it's great. I love Bing for that. I also love Bing because they're like, oh, it's your data. Did you want it? Here's Webmaster Tools. Don't count them out. Even if they are small as a search engine, they power a lot of other tools. They provide the answers for a lot of functionalities you may not think of immediately. So thanks, Bing. If you're watching, we love you.
All right, we've got one here that looks like it's designed for Ash. How did you overcome the initial challenge of getting traffic? Oh, I didn't read that. Traffic and orders in the early stages of car mats. I'm operating on a limited budget, so I can't just throw money at ads or Meta, at least not at scale. Early
Right.
days.
We just threw money at Google, but we did it in a very small way. So we weren't ranking anywhere, and we had a great domain name, but we didn't rank for a long time. So we just rolled out bit by bit, and we just we put the money behind products that we knew should sell to figure out why they weren't selling, to make them sell, and then once they were selling, we just kept scaling from there. Obviously that can cause cash flow issues, but it's the best way of doing it is actually start small, iterate, and then grow from there, rather than going in on day one spending a load of money.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So what does the panel feel about using AI to generate short descriptions on PLPs? Could this be considered spam AI content generation? Or since it's only short form content and not AI generation, longer form editorial content, is this safe to do? This is good because I don't really talk about AI today. So
I have really strong opinions on this, to be honest. I want to go off on a little bit of a mini rant, which is that's like equivalent of asking, what do you think about getting a writer to write PR? Like using AI is such a broad thing to say. It's like you can't just lazily use AI to write a description, right? You've got to prompt it. You have to give it some examples of what you're looking for. You have to give it a tone of voice. You have to maybe give it other documents to ingest and understand, and kind of, there is a lot of kind of setup to get AI to a point, in my opinion, unless you've already got a custom GPT to use or whatever system you've got, to create genuinely acceptable, wouldn't even say good, genuinely acceptable content worthy of putting on your site. So I think if you're happy to spend the time and invest the resource and the setup to get it done, absolutely. If you're thinking of doing it by just giving it a list of URLs or a list of category names and then blindly asking it to create content for you, you're wasting your damn time. The quality issue is still a problem regardless of who's writing that content. Whether it's a person, you need a good brief. Whether it's AI, you need a good brief. Whether it's your nan, you need a good brief. Point is, AI doesn't replace quality. It doesn't excuse quality being a problem. But that being said, on the flip side, you haven't got to go and write an essay. It is a PLP at the end of the day. But yeah, just be mindful that AI doesn't solve it from start to finish. You still have to put the work in.
And the big thing for me is that AI doesn't question the data you give it.
Yeah.
So a human who's looking at our data will go, well, that's wrong. So a lot of our listings, we get information, and actually a lot of the information we get for our listings is entirely inaccurate, particularly around years and models that the product will fit. So we go out there, we research it, and we actually make sure it fits the models we're giving it or we're listing it for. And if you gave that to AI, you're just going to end up with a worse version of what you started with in a lot of cases, because it won't go out there and do that research or spot when something's obviously wrong.
I mean, that ties back to trust. Yeah. You have the information right, then I can trust you. If you don't, I'm not going to trust you. Also, just throwing it out there. Google could spot when it says SEO text. So if you're doing it to try and game anything, that's going to be detected as not useful, particularly if you're moving down why I'm there. So if that's going above the thing that I came to see, don't do it.
What about not SEO text?
What'd you say?
What about not SEO text? Is that going to be okay?
I feel like we need to A/B test this.
Yeah, I think AI stuff is one of the bigger threats to SEO, not because it's like doing anything good, but because I think many businesses are distracted because leadership has been sold on this idea that AI can replace humans. And when it comes down to it, the models are not good enough yet. We've spent countless hours testing things, and the quality of work we get back is so bad. It doubles or triples the editing time, which is more expensive than hiring a content writer. And so I think a ton, like all the friends I talk to in this industry are doing the same thing. They're having to prove to leadership that AI cannot solve the problems right now. So if we're talking about like what is the biggest threat right now, it's being distracted by AI instead of the things that can actually cause growth.
It is 3 Furbies in a trench coat. I will fight that hill.
Okay, so have any of you guys seen quality signals pass from PDPs to PLPs when optimizing for the review system criteria? Do you think optimizing for this just benefits those product pages, or can pass quality signals through the domain as a whole?
You're made of some of the parts. Your e-commerce, you're made of your product. Yeah.
This is why I don't work for an agency anymore. With all due respect, I think that's the wrong question. Because do you customers
fight?
I just think, do your customers give a shit? The answer is probably not. So if you build an experience that's better for your customers, but technically slightly inept, it's probably going to perform better than if it was technically brilliant, but from a UX perspective, it was a serious pain in the ass. So by all means, we have to talk about these things. But if you're doing that as a way to try and sell more by proxy through SEO, I think that's the wrong question. I think there's a question behind that, which is why. But to answer that question directly, I mean, maybe, but like, even if the answer was yes, or even if the answer was no, would that, how's that going to impact what it is you do going forward? And I think that's not the kind of questions that when I get asked these things, will X equal Y in SEO? It's kind of like, well, even if the answer was yes, and even if the answer was no, would you do anything different? Is there any point in me going down that rabbit hole and finding the answer for you? And if the answer is no, then it was the wrong question. But not to disrespect the question, because I think it's an important one, but I just wanted to steer the narrative. And I think when it comes to e-commerce, we can sometimes get too caught up in the technicalities of what it is, rather than who it is we're trying to sell for. No one cares whether your market stall is made from stainless steel, carbon fiber, MDF, or plastic. All everyone cares about is what your market stall is selling and the person that's selling the thing and whether they're good enough, right? And I think, yeah, sometimes we overcomplicate it.
Nice.
Soz.
Right, Jojo, we've got time for one more, just about. All right, awesome. So alongside full hreflang implementation and internal linking, what is the best way to ensure good indexation across same language e-commerce domains? All right, so ENGB, ENIE, ENUS, etc., to avoid any duplicate content issues.
Are they localized? Because if you're just making English content for multiple sites, but they're not localized, that's where things get real muddy. But if there's different meaningful reasons why the UK page is the UK page and the .com page is the .com page, you got something to work with. Good subfolder structure, praise be. Verify those individually in Google Search Console as URL properties. That way you can get that great high-level look at the index coverage for each of them.
Yeah, I love that. And it goes back to the why, doesn't it? Like, why are you doing that? Yeah, if it is.
But why though?
Yeah, but why though? Is it just pricing? It's probably another way to do that. If it's a completely different product offering because of legal warranty, cool, go for it. But in my very personal experience in hreflang, in maybe half of the cases, which is probably like 10 over the years, we haven't gone ahead with hreflang because it wasn't the right thing to do. There wasn't enough to warrant having individual subfolders or individual sites or whatever that might be. It normally is just language in terms of like spellings of Z instead of S, US, and so on, pricing, and maybe lifestyle images could be slightly different, right? American home for a sofa versus a European or British home for a sofa. But yeah, as always, hreflang's a beast at the best of times. It's simple in theory, but in practice, amongst everything else, it can be a real headache. And then you wonder if the rewards are worth the effort. You know?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
We just launched the carmats.ie. Unfortunately, I couldn't get carmats.ie, which has really annoyed me. But that's gone really well. We've used Shopify's built-in markets, which does all the hreflang setup for you out of the box. That's worked really well. We rank almost immediately really strongly in Ireland, which has done the job. But we've also tried to look to get local links at the Irish domain to try and speed up that process. So it's not just 99% of our links are to the .co.uk, but we've also tried to start building them to the .e domain.
Nice.
Nice work. All right, folks, I guess we're at time. So thank you everybody for watching and for all your fantastic questions. In fact, there's a few we didn't even get to. So, and thanks, of course, to our amazing guests for generously giving up all your time and expertise. We'll be publishing the webinar over the next few days on the website, and we'll email that out to everybody who registered. So even if you missed the start, don't worry, you can catch up. Our next webinar is at the same time on Wednesday, 21st of August, which is 5 weeks from today. We're going to be digging into the Google data leak with none other than Dr. Marie Haynes. So keep an eye out on the socials for that announcement, and we'll hopefully see you there as well. Thank you, everybody.